This week on the Inside Athletic Training Podcast, we welcome in Anthony Parise, an assistant athletic trainer for the University of Minnesota baseball program. Enjoy the show. All right, Anthony, super excited to have you on the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. Look forward to talking about your career and your time at the University of Minnesota, where you are currently an athletic trainer with the baseball team. I know that's a huge role with the team and the university. We'll get into that soon. For some of the listeners out there who might not know your history, let's take it back to the beginning. Let us know where you're from, were you into sports growing up, but also how you found a passion for athletic training.
Hey, Sam, thanks for having me on. I just want to take a second to thank you for the opportunity. You have a great list of guests, and I'm honored to be one of those, especially taking a look into college athletics.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting to hear other people's backgrounds and how they got to where they are in their profession, especially in the professional baseball level. So thanks for having me on today.
Of course.
Where I'm from, La Quinta, California, it's a desert in Southern California, right in between the mountains and the beach. Kind of the perfect, beautiful place to grow up. Kind of ironic. I grew up in a desert. Now I live in Minnesota, where it could be minus 30 degrees as before. It could be 120 in the summer. So really big change, a little culture shock there, but get used to it over time.
Mm-hmm.
Some sports I grew up playing. Before I could even play T-balls in the backyard, my mom has pictures of me swinging a spatula, so it was kind of baseball was just going to be irrelevant at that point. Other sports, I was a very hyper child, so I kind of wanted to try out all the sports, played soccer, basketball, wrestling, even a little ice hockey, believe it or not, out in the desert.
Okay.
When I finally got into high school, it was kind of sit down and choose three, so I played football, wrestling, and baseball for a few years in high school, and then it was time to narrow it down. So ended up playing baseball because I was taking up all the weekends.
Sure.
And then I ended up graduating and played some college baseball at Adams State.
Yeah, no, that's a familiar story for a lot of people out there, just big into sports growing up, looking for a way to stay in the game. When your time, kind of ended for your playing career, were you already interested in athletic training? What kind of piqued your interest in getting into the profession and learning more in school?
Yes. So I kind of learned about athletic training later on in my career. We had an athletic trainer at high school, just kind of figured he was there for the big injuries, wasn't sure what he exactly did. Throughout college, it was more of the, if you're in the training room, you may not play type thing. And once I kind of took an athletic care and prevention class my junior year of college and learned everything about it, that's what really grew my interest and kind of wanted to further dig into it. And I studied kinesiology, and that's kind of where it all started. And I was very interested in the anatomy and physiology. And then once I was able to learn that I can be both in the medical field and work in athletics, it kind of just put itself together. And athletic training was the perfect profession that I thought to be.
Yeah, no question. And to piggyback off that, Anthony, when you were a college student at Adams State, did you have it in your mind that baseball was a sport you wanted to focus on in your athletic training career, or were you getting exposure to a number of different sports and kind of figuring out what was most interesting to you?
I think I had an idea that I wanted to go into baseball just because that was more of my passion. I was open up to other sports. My father was a football coach, so I was very interested in football. Also with wrestling, just kind of those high active sports where a lot of action's going on all the time. Ultimately, at that point, I thought athletic training, perfect opportunity to get into pro baseball. And that was kind of my goal from the get off was professional baseball, which obviously has changed over the years. But I was pretty open to working other sports. It was just more destined that I was going to end up working baseball.
And during your time in undergrad, were you exposed to other sports? Did you work with other groups, cover other sports? What was kind of that experience overall, athletic training wise for you?
Yes. So I did not work baseball at all during my undergrad.
Interesting.
I reached out to a local high school to get hours towards grad school, and it was football season. So I mostly worked football there. And then that transitioned into wrestling. And then I ended up going back to the college and kind of working some spring sports, but I was familiar with baseball, so I didn't work any baseball. And I wanted to get a feel for whether it was basketball or even track, cross country. I wanted to kind of figure out what I didn't want to do rather than already know what I knew.
Yeah, and when you were kind of making those decisions and looking into what sports you like, what you like about different opportunities in athletic training in the college setting, was there any specific role model who kind of walked you through how this profession works, or what you might want to look out for, or someone who kind of guided your decisions early on in college, or and so forth?
Yes, a little bit in undergrad. I worked with a high school athletic trainer, Steve Mundy. He was awesome, came over from Utah, had experience working baseball.
Okay.
And he basically said, leave your options open. High school, you work all the sports, and it's a great thing. And then when I finally got into grad school, that's where I had a couple of role models, Barry Steele, who was head of football at the time at University of Idaho, and my supervisor, preceptor, Justin Palmer, who overseed me with men's basketball. And at the time, I'd never been to a Division I school for athletics, so I wanted to stay at the University of Idaho, get the full experience in. Yeah. So while I was working men's basketball, Barry asked, hey, can you help out with some football? I said, sure, why not? I enjoyed the sport of football. And then before you know it, he basically made some good points of he wanted to make a good point of about working hard, taking the opportunity to be there every hour and every chance you can get, because that's where the learning is. Sure, you can show up for pre-practice, practice, and post-practice, but what about all the rehab and the treatments at happy early morning, the connection with the athletes that people don't normally see other than just the hard work you put in on the field?
Mm-hmm. No question. And we'll dig into that here a bit. I want to talk more about your time at the University of Idaho as a graduate assistant athletic trainer. A really kind of formative time for a lot of guests we've had on the show. It sounds like for you as well. How did you end up at the University of Idaho? Talk through that process. Did you have different schools you were looking to go to? I know you said you didn't have much experience at larger universities. What were you kind of looking for in terms of opportunity at grad school?
So I decided to go to grad school kind of last minute. I wasn't sure job I was seeking outside of my undergrad until I took the athletic care and prevention class. About my senior year of my undergrad, that's when I've kind of zoned in and said, okay, athletics training, that's what I want to do. What do I have to do to get there?
Yep.
So I reached out to a few athletic trainers that I didn't even know at the time. And they said, well, now you have to go on and get a master's degree, a master's in athletic training. I said, okay. So then I started looking up certain universities and kind of wanted to stay more on the West Coast. And then I reached out to an athletic trainer and she said, University of Idaho would be perfect for you. The good things about the program is you are in class during the summers where you take your core classes such as anatomy, eval, rehab. And then during the years when you go out and do your clinical rotations off campus, and you can go anywhere in the country, wherever you want. And then you take your other classes online, such as like psychology, gen med, neuroscience. So it was kind of the perfect opportunity for me to branch out and experience all these different schools that I may not have experienced before.
And when you were at the University of Idaho, again, I know we talked about working different sports. What was kind of your day-to-day like there? Was it mostly a focus on baseball? Were there other sports involved? What'd your kind of day-to-day look like there?
So at the University of Idaho, they didn't even have a baseball team. So it was kind of fitting for me to go there and reach out to try other sports.
Sure.
And their athletic training room is a fairly small athletic training room, and all sports shared that athletic training room. There was no satellite areas or anything like that. And so my day-to-day, I'd wake up early morning going for rehabs. Mostly it was between basketball and football, and then you'd have some track roll in. And then it was kind of like a lunch break. And then basketball started a little earlier. So I'd show up for basketball treatments in the morning, then the taping, and then head out to practice. And then football would kind of roll around in a little bit later, depending on the season. So then I would go back in, work with rehabs, treatments, kind of get a feel for what everyone was doing. And it was kind of the perfect situation because I was able to work with different groups of athletes, even though I was assigned to
Okay.
work basketball. And basketball is very eye-opening for me. I've never been much of a basketball person, but just to work the sport was very different than I initially anticipated.
And after your time at Idaho, you made some stops at some pretty prestigious universities as an athletic trainer, including some time with USA Baseball. Can you walk us through the timeline of kind of what led you from University of Idaho and where your stops were next?
So at the University of Idaho, I still had one more year of schooling left. And that's when I was able to kind of branch out, wanted to see what kind of setting I wanted to work in. At that point, my mind kind of changed from, professional setting to maybe I want to work in the college setting, but I'm unsure yet. So then that's when I ended up reaching out to Stanford University, and I worked with their football program during the summer as a clinical rotation. And that was a great experience. Had a great season, went to a bowl game, the atmospheres of the different stadiums. And then my mind kind of thought, maybe I do want to be in college athletics. Maybe it doesn't have to be just baseball now. Football was amazing. It was fast paced, a lot going on, high impact, everything that I kind of wanted to go into. And then from there, I got a call from the University of Idaho and said Vanderbilt is looking for another clinical rotation student to go out there for 6 months. And at the time, I was like, you know what? I'm having a good time at Stanford. I kind of want to stay. But they're like, this is baseball. It's a great opportunity for you. So I said, yes, definitely. Baseball, now I get to see what it's like at the highest level in Division I. Perfect opportunity. So I went out to Vanderbilt. They had a great season. 2019, ended up winning the World Series. It was kind of one of those mind-blowing experiences that from that point on, I knew 100% that I wanted to work in Division I baseball. Kind of my thoughts from working professional baseball changed very drastically, where I knew I wanted to be Power 5 in college baseball. And then from there, I reached out to Auburn University, who hosts internships right out of school. And I ended up getting that internship, and I worked there for the full year. COVID hit, so that was a little tough. And then once after that, then it was kind of time to find a new situation. What is going to be my next building block to get me to that point to Power 5 baseball?
Yeah, we a previous guest we had on recently is Chris Matarazzo from Vanderbilt University baseball as well, and he talked a lot about just how not necessarily the stress, but or pressure, but how big of an atmosphere it is in Vanderbilt, especially for baseball, as many of us know. Talk about that time a little bit and kind of what was it like getting exposure to, many of us know Vanderbilt is maybe the biggest baseball program right now in the country. Talk about exposure to that. Was it eye-opening? Was it cool to see the resources they had? What would that kind of do for you in terms of your professional growth?
Yeah, so it was definitely eye-opening. For me, baseball players are different individuals, different cultures. They're kind of all similar in a sense. But when I first got there, it didn't really go through my mind of these are the best baseball players in the country.
Yeah.
It was just more of a sense of, okay, I'm at Vanderbilt, great Division I history, projected to have a great year. So let's kind of see what happens, build rapport with the guys. And then you kind of dig a little deeper of, wow, these are amazing baseball players and they have a chance to do something great this season. And then just kind of being there, seeing what they do and how they take care of themselves and how we can step in to help them. And then alongside of that is all the technology. I played baseball from junior college at a small D2 in Colorado. And then all of a sudden I'm at this place that has a whole pitching lab and we do all these drills and everything. So it's very eye-opening to see how I can fit into the situation and help them when they do have these other resources.
Yeah, we definitely have heard a lot from previous guests in the college setting about resources being so impactful to what you can do there. Well, after that time, Anthony, you found yourself at Eastern Kentucky University as the assistant director for sports medicine. A shift from previous roles and something different. What went into your decision to kind of accept that position and move over to Eastern Kentucky?
Yeah, so I was finished at Auburn. During that period of time, COVID had hiring freezes on all the universities pretty much across the country. So I was out there applying, and then all of a sudden I would get emails, calls back saying, hey, if you're still interested, we're in a freeze right now, but we should be out of it within a couple months. And then kind of a funny situation, I applied to Eastern Kentucky for a football position. And then I received a call a week later saying, hey, we have somebody in mind. Sorry about the football position type thing. And I was like, oh, that's okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And then the guy, Jeff Carrico, which was ahead of time, was like, wait a second. We do have a baseball position opening. What are your thoughts on that? And I said, that is perfect. That's what I've been looking for. So yes. And he says, we need to move fast. Let's get this done before they put a hiring freeze on. So within maybe 3 days, I get another call and an offer. And then I accept the offer. And then for the little twist, he says, well, you're going to have a secondary sport. And I said, that's fine. I'm willing to work anything. And he says that secondary sport is dance. And I said, yes, sir, no problem. But I have to be honest up front. I am not familiar with dance by any means. Yeah. And he said, it's going to be new, a little learning curve for you, but it's a good opportunity and you'll learn along the way.
And how was that in terms of learning a completely new sport and completely new movements and bodies? And what was that experience like for you?
Dance was honestly a great experience. They practice for hours and hours, and the girls come in and, they try to teach me what they do so I can learn the movements and all the dancer moves names, which took a little while to learn, but at the same time, they put their bodies in very unique situations and a lot of rotational power. So then I was able to kind of link up that they do have some aspects that baseball players need, but they just need it a little differently in order to dance.
Yeah, always good from what I hear from guests on the show to get your hands on different athletes and learn different movements. It can be nothing but a benefit for a professional. Well, Anthony, after your time at Eastern Kentucky, you made the move over to the University of Minnesota in 2022, where you are now. What went into the decision to make that jump up north and begin a career over there where you've been the past 3 years?
Yeah, so I was moving around quite a bit at the time. And my beautiful wife, Caitlin, she was also moving around with me. She's a school teacher in special ed elementary.
Okay.
So it was a little easier for her to move around. She was able to find a job wherever we go. But at a certain point, she basically wanted to find a place and stick there for a longer period of time.
Sure.
And so she knew my goal was to get into Power 5 baseball. And so the next opportunity that arose was the University of Minnesota. I did a little digging and research because I just didn't want to leave a good situation that I had at Eastern Kentucky and then potentially go into a bad situation just because it's Power 5. Didn't want to put myself in that situation. So I did a little digging and I found out that they're a very heavy developmental school. They take their freshmen, they progress them all the way to seniors until they either get drafted or graduate. And that's kind of a program I wanted to be part of. I wanted to specifically be a part of the developmental program to help these athletes get to that next step, which would be the draft professional level.
And what have you enjoyed? Minnesota's a pretty prestigious baseball school, especially for schools in the Midwest and the Big Ten. A ton of success there over the years. Have you noticed just the resources available to you have helped you just grow as a professional and improve your work compared to kind of some of the smaller college levels you've been at in your career?
Yes, the resources are different. They're closer to us. There are more of them. I've always kind of been a person, make do with what you have type of way. But out here we have, the sports nutrition, the chiropractors, sports psychology. We're also part of a big hospital system. We have the Mayo Hospital out here, which is one of the largest in the country. So the resources went from, you have a small hospital down the street for x-ray where then you have to drive an hour to get an MRI down in Eastern Kentucky, to a point where I can get everything done within a few hours and have an answer. So that kind of makes it a little easier, especially when you're dealing with some of the coaching staff and they want answers right then and there. So it was definitely a big change and makes it a little easier on myself to have those resources so close to us.
Yeah. And in terms of those resources, Anthony, talk to us a bit about what the athletic training staff specifically for baseball looks like. Staff members, people involved. What does that kind of performance staff for the baseball team look like at the University of Minnesota?
So I am the only athletic trainer. I typically get a student from another university that would like to come in and do their clinical rotation. I think that's big, both on my part to kind of help educate them and also get them interested in our field by promoting. And I think baseball is an easy way to do that. We do a lot of treatments, pitchers, position players. They're all very unique and kind of need things a little bit, I should say, more. But so I am the only athletic trainer. We have a team physician strictly with baseball. And then we also have 6 team physicians throughout our whole sports medicine program and 11 orthopedic doctors, which one is assigned to baseball. We do branch out for specialty orthopedics. Down in Mayo, we use a elbow surgeon who is amazing, Dr. Christopher Camp, also with the Twins.
Yeah, of course.
So that has been a big help for us. And then also within, we have Scott McWilliams, who is sports performance, and he's a very important piece. I'm a big advocate of the weight room. And so I think it is very important to have somebody who could be on the same page and communicate, because we work both hand in hand when it comes to working with athletes.
Sure. Yeah, definitely a great staff there and a ton of resources compared to different levels that you mentioned there. I want to get a bit into your day-to-day as just the athletic trainer at Minnesota with the baseball team. I know we're underway right now. Season is right around the corner. Talk about what's going on with the team right now throughout the week. Kind of walk us through a week for you, with probably players being in every day and really getting ready to ramp things up here.
Yep. So we are ramping up for season. We're about 2 weeks away until our first road trip. Day to day for us, we kind of want to play out our weeks as if we're already in season. We scrimmage for a midweek on Tuesday, and then we also scrimmage Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We have pitchers lined up for each specific days, and then we have team practices in between. So typically, pitchers are the first ones in there. They're kind of a little bit more of your higher maintenance when it comes to players. So they come in about an hour and a half before. That's also when I have my rehab guys come in. They kind of go through a thoracic and hip mobility sheet, and then they also go through a warm-up sheet for their arm, and then they either go out to practice or they have their pitchers meeting. And kind of towards the tail end of the pitchers leaving, position players tend to come in, and they kind of perform the same aspects. They have their hip mobility that they're supposed to be doing, maybe hop on a foam roll, stretch, kind of prepare themselves to go out there and stretch with our sports performance. We kind of have 3 practice days and then an off day, and then we have our scrimmages in between. We are very big into lifting right now. What we found over the course of a few years is baseball players tend to lose weight in season.
Yeah.
And for us, the big thing is to keep them on track and train them to lift, whether they're game days or not, just to kind of keep their power, weight, however you want to look at it. That is kind of the big change that we've made. So we are training them to lift on game days as well during this time period. And so afterwards, it's big treatment times. Everyone's sore. The ramp up period is very difficult. We are inside every single day, except for yesterday, 50 degrees out here in Minnesota. It was big time to get outside in January.
For sure.
But for the most part, we are inside in kind of a small football indoor area where we still have room to scrimmage, but at the same time, it's hard concrete turf. It puts wear and tear on the bodies. And those are just kind of things that we have to manage working up going into a season.
And with the season approaching soon, I know, things have changed a lot in terms of conference realignment, and this definitely impacts travel for you guys. Have you done a lot of preparation for that? I know time zones are going to change going east and west. It's different than the old school Big Ten when you just kind of traveled up and down north and south. What have you guys done to kind of prepare your athletes for some extra travel this coming season?
Yes, it is different. We will be more on the West Coast this year and within the upcoming years with that conference alignment change. The good news for us is we are a traveling school because of our winters. We are on the road for traditionally the first 2, possibly 3 months. Outside of that, we do play at US Bank Stadium, which is the Viking Stadium, which is super nice to have. But for example, we did not have that last year. So we were on the road until the first week of April. And we were bouncing back and forth from East Coast, West Coast. So we kind of have dealt with that in the past. So I don't think that's going to be a big issue for us, even though this year we don't travel as much east to west, but it definitely changes the perception going into a travel day. It's very difficult to figure out sleep patterns if we are on the East Coast one weekend, then the West Coast, and then we have to go back to the East Coast. Good news for us is that we are Central Time, so they aren't drastic changes as other teams have to go from West Coast to East Coast.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes total sense. And outside of the players, so for yourself and as an athletic trainer and just a professional looking to, do the best job you can, how do you handle being on the road so much? As you mentioned, especially at Minnesota, where you got to stay out of the cold for the first couple months of the season. Is there anything you do to, mentally prepare for so much travel or physically or to wind down or get ready for a day when you're on the road?
Yeah, so it kind of all builds up. I'm very big into you need to be prepared early. Preparation is key. So I typically pack a day or two even before our travel takes off. Okay. We have the extra supplies that we can leave out for the stuff that we need to go before travel. But I typically pack up early, make sure everything's there. I reach out to the players to see if there's anything extra that they may need possibly. Because we do travel with a lot of equipment, bring rehab equipment, all the recoveries, such as like the Normatex, the red lights, the Mark Pros. So there's a lot of equipment that kind of goes into packing. So I try to get the trunks done early, and then I can kind of focus on what I personally lead at the field. So that would be like my personal kit. And then kind of from there, it's making sure everything gets off the bus, into the airport, onto the plane, so forth. And then once we get to the hotel, that's my time to decompress a little bit. I start to unpack everything. The players are out getting changed because we're about to go hit a practice or maybe some active warm up or mobility. So that's kind of my chance to set everything up. That way, when you have 5 to 6 people asking you for something, it's like, wait a second, let me get in this kit, this trunk, and there it's all laid out, ready to go, and kind of takes a little bit less stress, and that way you can just enjoy being on the road.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to touch on what you just mentioned there, just enjoy being on the road. Athletic training is a incredibly busy profession. You've walked through a bunch of stuff today that kind of keeps you busy and, you have to handle and prepare for. Do you have a favorite aspect of the job in general? Is it maybe getting a player back on the field successfully and keeping them on the field? Is it kind of the camaraderie and development like you mentioned earlier? What do you enjoy most about your job right now?
Right now, I'd have to say, obviously, getting someone back on the field, yes, huge win for both of us. It's very tough to see someone go through an injury and then they have to rehabilitate for potentially almost a year, and then they finally get their chance to come back. But one big thing that I really enjoy is just kind of the rapport and the relationships that you build with these athletes, especially them coming in their freshman year. They probably haven't been away from home much.
Yeah.
And you're kind of the go-to person for everything, which sometimes, could be difficult, but other times, that's what you're kind of there for. We see them more than their parents, the coaches, other than their roommates. So it's kind of getting to learn about all these people who come from all over to create one culture and just kind of really relate and build rapport with these athletes. That way, if they do get hurt or something happens, then there's that built-in trust that they can come directly to you. And then it's kind of like, hey, all right, we got this. Let's get this done. Let's get you back on the field. No wasted time, and kind of move forward from there.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thought from a lot of our guests in the professional and college setting is building that trust and relationships is very difficult, and it can be, and especially in the college setting where you have people bouncing around from year to year, transfer portal, stuff like that. So cool to hear you echo those statements of wanting to maintain those relationships as players develop there. Well, Anthony, it's been awesome talking to you on the show. I appreciate your time. To wrap up today, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment called Extra Bases. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions and kind of let you share some of your personal ideas about athletic training. So we'll kick it off at first base. You've been in a lot of athletic training rooms throughout your time, as you mentioned. Do you have a favorite room that you've worked in your career so far?
So far, I'd probably have to say Minnesota.
Okay.
Out of all the other training rooms I've been at, they have been their very own for baseball specifically. Here at Minnesota, we use an old football athletic training room.
Okay.
It's huge. I share it between softball and soccer, which nobody's in there at the same time. So I can fit in half a team can come in at once. And typically we have a lot of guys coming in and out. It's just nice to have that space, a lot of exercise equipment so they can get whatever they need done. Mm-hmm. And I would have to say, yeah, Minnesota.
Awesome. Moving on to second base. You mentioned your time at Vanderbilt and other universities, amazing stadiums and a ton of cool atmospheres for games. Being one of the only guys who's in the dugout who's not a player, which is really unique for an athletic trainer. What's your favorite college baseball stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
My favorite college baseball stadium, I would have to say Tennessee.
Okay.
Just the atmosphere is electric. They have, the big walkway along right field line, and they have people in the outfield over the walls. It is just an electric stadium to kind of take it all in.
Yeah, absolute powerhouse program. Can't beat kind of the atmospheres in the SEC, I assume. Moving on to third base. On that kind of same topic, do you have a favorite college campus or town that you guys visit on the road?
Yes, for myself, I would have to say it's Ohio State. They have a professional hockey team there. They have a really nice downtown area. It's just nice to get out and walk campus, and they have a lot of rich history there. So I'd say within the Big Ten, that's kind of my favorite campus and area to walk around and enjoy.
And for the last question today, Anthony, moving on to home plate here, you've spent a lot of time in the profession, a lot of time in the college setting. Did you ever have like I made it kind of welcome to being a professional moment during your time as an athletic trainer?
Yes, and this kind of piggybacks off another one of the questions because I had an individual went through UCL reconstruction. Mm-hmm. In my mind, it was just one of those things like you're doing your job, you get him back. He throws off a game mound for the first time. He comes off, huge smile on his face, walks down the dugout and says, "We did it." And it was just like one of those moments where in your mind, you're like, well, I was just doing my job. I didn't really do anything. But in his mind, it was more like a team effort saying, we did this. And then at that point, it was kind of like, okay, perfect. This is where I know exactly where I want to be.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That kind of a testament to what you guys do as athletic trainers. You're not just like many people might think, you're not just taping ankles, doing rehab, getting people ready. You are a family member for a lot of people and for the club and the university and, guiding these players back to health, which is obviously hugely important. So really, really cool story there from you. Well, Anthony, really appreciate your time during the show today. All your insights about the college setting and your time at the University of Minnesota. And we wish you and all your staff and players at Minnesota nothing but the best of luck this upcoming season.
Yep. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. For more information about PBATS and athletic training, visit pbats.com. See you next time.